Hello, hello.
Well, hello, James. Hello, everybody listening in.
Good
It's
evening.
Monday night.
It is Monday night and it's time for That's Class, which I'm very
This time of the
excited
week.
about. A highlight of my week as always, Craig. I'm sure it is for you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just can't believe that another week has gone by. So much has been happening once again. I don't think we're going to, so what is this, 4 weeks in? I don't think we're going to struggle for things to talk about in
Which?
the coming months and years, because obviously this is going to be something that we continue on and
Decade.
develop as we go. But
Yeah.
actually, James, there's been some controversy that we need to address straight off the bat.
No.
Okay. We've been getting some messages in from our fans, from our followers, from our listeners and viewers, from
Okay.
every corner of God's green earth. Okay.
Are they good messages?
Well, they've been directed at me personally. We've got
Well,
Susan from
that's a relief. That's good.
Susan from Paraguay. Says you are a complete and utter inspiration. I just wish I could hear you a little bit better. We've got John from Tibet, all the way from Tibet. I listen to you while meditating. Naughty, naughty, but please, your audio isn't the best. So I've taken this on board, and I'm hoping everyone can hear me a little bit better at home right now. There's a new microphone in the room. There's an earphone in. The echo should be gone, and onwards and upwards. Yeah. So I mean, we've been getting feedback. The people ask, we respond. That's all I'm going to say.
From Tibet to Paraguay, the people couldn't hear you, and that's probably because they're in Tibet or Paraguay. It might well be a distance issue, but now with this new microphone, you're unstoppable. And this is my highlight of That's Class, is connecting you, Craig, with the people of the world, because they want more. They haven't had enough, from Northumberland broadcasting across the globe. And that's what we're doing here. And it's great that we've had some feedback on that, Naughty, naughty, indeed. I mean, that's, if I had to summarize you in 2 words, that's the two I would use.
I think, the insights that we're giving out and, our talking points, and people need to hear that crystal clear at home. Yeah. So we'll see. Let's, there's a new microphone. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully John in Tibet is meditating, not in peace, but with crystal clear audio from his favorite podcast. So
I can see him now. I don't know what John looks like. And if you're listening, John, as I'm sure you are, I can envision you on a hilltop, maybe at a temple, and you've got your headphones in and you're feeling very zen. And these 2 beautiful Northumbrian accents are flowing to you through the sound waves, and hopefully, making you feel even more relaxed. Although the content perhaps that we're talking about isn't the most relaxing, perhaps we can bring it to you in a relaxing way.
And Susan in Paraguay as well, obviously really keen on current affairs in Northumberland, and rural life. So I'm just glad we're providing that service globally, and that's what we're going to continue to do over the next weeks 100%. And months and years, like I said. So plenty to discuss, plenty to go out. We've got a few different talking points lined up for this evening. I'll outline a couple of things before we really get going. We discussed some of the insider or potential alleged insider trading issues that may be going on in America around some of the statements that Donald Trump has been making and the money that has been made off the back of some of those statements. What else have we got? There was a big march in London over the weekend.
Was this the Together Alliance?
Yeah. So we'll I think maybe just worth discussing that.
Definitely.
And then we've got a couple of new segments. Now, we discussed at the back end of last week's show that we want to do Star of the Week. Now, it's a shame that John in Tibet didn't suggest any stars of the week.
Well, this is because his Star of the Week would have been you, and we've already said, we cannot be handing out biased awards. We'd be like Donald Trump. That's our equivalent of insider trading. That would just be corruption on a that's class scale.
Yeah, it'd be like giving ourselves a jumbo jet, a Qatari jumbo jet, you know,
or a
like
FIFA World Peace Prize or something of that equivalent, perhaps.
and actually, while we're on Trump, I'm gonna trial out a new segment because I feel like the Trump nonsense comes thick and fast. Okay, and there's too much to highlight all of it every week. So, nonsense of the week, I think could be. We'll give it a go. We'll see. Again, we'll see what Susan in Paraguay thinks. We'll see what John thinks. I'm sure they'll feedback, and I'm sure people elsewhere will let us know what they think of the segments. There's a jingle. I've put together. Yeah.
have you written it?
It's a cappella. It's live. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, and then there's a couple of bits and pieces around British culture as well, which I think, as I mentioned it last week, you know, chronically online. Let's just say that I've brought quite a bit of content.
Is this relating to one of the many videos that you've sent me this week? And when I opened it, is it the one that I'm thinking of that refers to a term called British maxing?
British maxing, yeah. So I mean, we'll get to it, but I'm still trying to come to terms with what maxing means. But I'm guessing it just means to absorb and to amplify.
Max it out. I think maximum.
Maxing out. Yeah. I mean,
so
yeah.
Lux maxing is, of course, the most common one on the internet. And anyone who watched the Manosphere show will probably know of that. And then obviously there's a particular influencer called clavicular.
Yes.
Is that a part of the human body, Craig? Clavicle. Is that what his name's about? I can't quite work that out. Is it something to do with like here?
I feel like I've exercised my clavicle.
Before. I'm sure you do regularly. I quite like my bit there. I've got a nice bit there. And I don't know if it's a clavicle or not. So maybe I'm wasting my time here. I could be lux maxing on the internet. Yes. I don't know if I've got the jawline for it, but the beard does God's work.
But that's the beauty of lux maxing, is that, you know, I mean, and I'm not saying that you don't have it to begin with, James. You clearly do, but it's the opportunity to max your looks given enough money. I think we're podcast maxing. It's fair to say.
Maybe we are without knowing it. But I'll tell you one thing, Craig. Neither of us need to worry about looks maxing because we are. I would say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we are beautiful as we are, as everyone is, including John in Tibet and was it Susan in Paraguay?
Susan, yeah, Susan.
Okay, yeah. For around the world, everyone's beautiful as they are. Don't be worrying about looks maxing. Listen, this isn't a space for that. That class is a space where you don't need to worry about looks maxing. But I'll be very keen to hear about this British maxing and how we and then find out if we're doing that right or not.
I think we're all grown old with it, with grace together on that class. Yeah,
absolutely. So I got ID'd the other day. So
yeah.
Why are you laughing? Why is that? You look horrified. That's not reassuring.
25 and over, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get into a Latin bar. And I was asked for my driving license, which I proudly, showed.
Well, I know one person who isn't being ID'd at any bars, and that is Mr. Donald Trump.
Oh yeah.
I think recognition is the best form of identification, and he's a very recognizable face, a very recognizable pensioner. Although I'm not sure, he probably will be collecting a pension.
I think probably,
if he's there, get it. And yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was going back, touching on what we discussed last week. We spoke about Polymarket, because I actually didn't really fully understand how Polymarket worked. We were talking about, for those who didn't listen last week, that there was a very suspicious $1.5 billion bet placed on Polymarket on the oil prices dropping, which they did, and there was a £500 million profit made off that bet. So what I didn't actually understand was, because what my question was, what my thought was, who is losing the money? So there's this bet that's been put on, 1.5 billion. and then they're making 500 million.
Yeah.
Where does that money come from?
Who they're betting against? Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're doing is essentially you're buying shares in either side of the bet. So if you've got money on one side of the bet and it loses, essentially you're betting against other investors. You invest in Polymarket essentially, rather than like placing a bet. So it's like saying, is Susan from Paraguay going to be listening this week? Yes, no. You invest in yes, I invest in no. If I win, your money comes to me. But that's spread out across the market. So anybody can go and invest how much money. It's essentially like buying shares. That is basically what you're doing.
Is that why when you look at it and it says like, there's $26 million bet on this at the moment, then that means that obviously the payout is much bigger when depending on your odds. So like Susan from Paraguay listening, 100% odds, I would say, right? She's going to be listening, 100%.
Nailed on.
So I win that one. And why you're betting against it, I don't know, but presumably because there is a chance of greater odds for you. So if you did win, you would make a lot more money than I would make from that. So, I mean, obviously that's how gambling works generally, but where that money comes from and how people are placing those bets, and when these bets are phenomenal in scale and size, and there is zero regulation with them as well, that's what really fascinates me. I tried to have a look at placing one to see if I could do one as an experiment, and I couldn't because I'm in the UK. And I thought, how do you get around this? I looked at every single way of getting around it. Couldn't. VPN didn't work. None of it worked.
No.
So yeah, thankfully our regulations are clearly holding up strongly there, which is good. But in the wild west of the USA, no such thing.
Well, yeah, it's good to hear that it's been regulated in the UK. However, clearly not being regulated in the US. I mean, this whole conversation made me question, or raise the question of, while in power, and this is because I think it's worth pointing out that this isn't just a Donald Trump issue. This is an issue a lot wider, and as far as I can, my very limited research I've done on it, people on both sides of the floor, Democrats, Republicans, are making money, from pretty suspicious trading, and a lot of money is being made while people are in power, essentially. And as I was looking, so my question was, just to go back to it, sorry, should politicians be allowed to? This is a question to you, and for something for people to think at home. Should politicians be allowed to trade stocks and shares while in power?
No, not at all. And I take this further, Craig. I don't think politicians should have other jobs either. I don't think they should be making money from consultancies. I don't think they should be making money, Mr. Nigel Farage, from TV programs. And of course, it's not just him. You've had David Lammy have an LBC show and stuff. But I do not think when you are an elected representative, because listen, I have worked for them. That job is 24/7, 7 days a week, right? You don't really get a day off. Your weekends are spent in constituencies, which they should be doing constituency stuff. Monday through Thursday is in Westminster, right? On a Friday, it might be quieter, but people tend to do constituency surgery. So you are full-time working on that, right? And I know it's different in America. They're not necessarily doing constituency stuff as well, but you should be full-time working on the representation of that thing. It's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a service. And for you to be able to make money from it, look, by all means, when you retire, go and work at a consultancy, go and work at an advisory firm, go and buy stocks and shares based on whatever you want to do in your knowledge. But while you are, especially with proximity to power, so if you're in government, if you have any control over relationships with markets, you should be a million miles away from it. And the fact that, and I know it's not just the Republicans, but the fact that the MAGA Republicans especially had Nancy Pelosi was like a target of theirs for so long because of her insider trading, quite prolific. In fact, a lot of people were copying and pasting her accounts, on these betting and kind of investment apps because they knew they would make money from it. So, knowledge is power. It makes you money. But when you're at the top of government, there is just no way that we can tell whether someone got that knowledge because of something connected to their job. So I just say no, they shouldn't have any access to it at all.
I think it's absolutely bang on what you said there about second jobs as well. And I think probably, or at least I like to think, the insider trading is slightly less prolific in the UK than what it is in America. Although, to be honest, I honestly old man's
a lot of
However,
setup to stop it. There's a lot of setup to stop it in ways that we are quite good here. I'm quite proud. Even our expenses scandals and stuff in the past haven't been the way that they've been in other countries. Of course they were bad, but we have an organization called IPSA now, IPSA, that basically regulates politicians financially. And you would get bedded down in complaints. There are a lot of politically motivated complaints put in about, for example, if an MP, because MP staff, here's the one thing a lot of people don't know. MP staff are the biggest expenses, right? So they are an expense in themselves to the taxpayer. But those staff should not be doing anything political during their time of office hours working for Westminster. So what ends up happening is people take leave or they say, I'm not working today, and they go and campaign for the MP that they work for, right? So everyone knows it's happening. That's how it works. But there are often complaints put in from one side or the other against each other about, oh, such and such was working on parliamentary hours, but they were doing stuff for the Labour Party, or such and such was working for the Tories while they were doing this. It's very petty and it happens back and forth. And it's kind of a system where it's like, oh, it's all mutually beneficial to everyone, so no one talks about it publicly. But it does kind of bring to light that question because, while we're fussing over that, it is always astounded me that in America, you can literally take, and I do lobbying now. It's what I do. I own a business doing lobbying, and I'll lobby for causes and companies that I agree with and that I like. But here, it's very much, I'll email a politician. I'll say, do you want to meet these people? I will open conversations. I'll give them advice about what's happening in politics at the moment. In America, what I would be doing is taking cash from my client and giving it to a politician and telling them to vote a certain way. Simple as that.
Can you just explain what specifically is meant by lobbying?
Yeah, so lobbying is basically, in this country, we don't even call it that anymore. We call it advocacy a lot of the time, or we call it, advisory or consultancy. And you'll find these like big companies that are something advisors or something consultants. And it's always very vague about what they're doing, but they're given access to power. It's about the knowledge that you have of how these systems work, and anyone who wants to influence either legislation. Normally, the aims of a private company would be to change a law to benefit them in some way, or to try and get a government contract and get money out of the government, right? So I don't have an issue with that in principle. I think people should be able to influence and ask questions and try and promote their own interests. That's fine, as long as it's public. As long as you know about it, and it has to be. When I do something in Holyrood in the Scottish Parliament, I have to write it in a book. I have to submit it online. I have to put it in and say, we met with such and such at this time on this day, and it's there as a public record. You can see it. The whole country can see it, because you need to know who your politicians are meeting with. Same with like your register of members' interests in the UK Parliament. All of them should be listed on there. It's how we catch Nigel Farage out all the time when he's doing consultancy work for companies that literally try to get people visas. So he's literally trying to get immigrants to come here. It's just the only difference is they're millionaires as opposed to poor people, So all of that we know because we have these systems. In America, there is so much less regulation. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, the comparisons between the UK and the US are stark, to say the least. Even, going back to what you said about the expenses scandal and registering gifts and all those sorts of things. I mean, absolute uproar when Keir Starmer went to a football match in a box. Whatever. Take from that what you will. That everyone's entitled to their own opinion on that. But then looking at what's going on over in America, where Trump, although it's been taken through the not Ministry of Defense, the Pentagon, being given a jumbo jet. Was it a 747 or the newer version, whatever it is, the Airbus A380, or an $800 million aircraft was gifted to Donald Trump from the Qatari government. And this is along a whole host of other just like, I don't know, like gold. I think the Israeli government gave him a golden pager and all these different like gifts, and it's just brushed off the shoulder. But just to go back, James, a little bit to talking about insider trading and whether or not you should be allowed to shift stocks and shares while you're in power. I mean, I was just looking into this before we started up the stream. And there was some research done by Reuters that said, so bearing in mind Donald Trump started his second term at the start of 2025.
Yeah.
In the first 6 months of 2025, Donald Trump's family earned more than $800 million in crypto sales just in that first half of the year. That's in 6 months, 800 million in crypto sales. Now, that is mind-boggling sums of money, right? And it just makes you think, doesn't it? You know, what is the motive for the likes of Donald Trump and what we're now seeing in the UK with Nigel Farage shifting and pivoting into cryptocurrency? I mean, Nigel Farage has just invested £250,000 in Nadeem Zahawi's new crypto startup. Reform. Reform are the only party. Although there's a caveat to this now, but Reform are the only party that would receive crypto donations, which, by all accounts, has since been banned by government. I don't think parties are now able to take crypto donations. Political parties aren't allowed to take crypto donations. But I just find it very, very interesting, how the way that Nigel Farage he's the elected representative, again, what you said before, of Clacton-on-Sea. He's an MP. Now, he's on GB News more often than we're on live stream on that class. He's in America doing cryptocurrency conference appearances, and all of these different things that he's all these little side hustles that he's got going on. How infuriated would you be if you had voted for Nigel Farage to be your representative? And I think being an MP is the ultimate form of representation, right? So, like, I'm a trade unionist. I know you're a trade unionist as well. You elect a workplace rep so that all workplace related issues. You've got someone to represent you at work. It's big. I think, to be honest, I think it's an honour to be a workplace rep. And that is amplified even more to be an MP and to cover an entire constituency. For me, representing the people, it's a hell of an honour. Now, is he doing that? What's his motivation to be the MP of Clacton-on-Sea?
Crazy. It's crazy. It's to become, because you can only become prime minister if you're an MP, and that's the reality. And he's, his ambitions are obviously clear. I mean, he says they are. I don't know if he does want to be a prime minister, but it's a separate thing altogether. But Nigel Farage made over £1 million last year outside of being an MP. Like that, it's just not right. It's not right. The salary is already, a pretty impressive salary. I am one of the few people who doesn't complain about MPs kind of salaries and stuff, because I think of it from a perspective. I've seen many people, and some of our viewers might disagree with me on this, but I've seen many people get elected from, like, let's say, for example, and I know people who've been in this situation, who have been a Labour Party candidate somewhere they didn't necessarily think they were going to win. They were working at Tesco the week before, doing split shifts and doing part-time work with their campaigning, and they get elected as an MP, and you get given a letter the night that you're elected, and it says you need to be in Westminster, like, straight away. You need to go and be sworn in. Immediately, like, for somebody who's got money in their back pocket, that's not a problem. But you haven't got an expenses account immediately. Nobody's going to hand you money. You haven't been given a month's salary in advance. You've got to get yourself to London. You've got to get a suit. You've got to get all these things. Like, it is not a system that is set up. It's a system that's set up to assume that people already have money, and that they'll be okay to travel, and that they'll be okay to do whatever. And there's bursaries and there's all sorts of things, but very difficult to access immediately. So it's not set up for people who have no money to all of a sudden go into and make money. The 80 grand a year Nigel Farage gets from being an MP is not a priority and or importance to him financially. He makes more. He makes, let me do the maths quickly, 6 times more doing Cameo, making videos for people, saying stupid stuff, as we showed last week. Like, that's insane. That's mad. Of course it's not going to be his priority. No wonder he's never in Clacton. He doesn't care about it, and that's going back to the day of when MPs just got a seat somewhere in the country. They lived in London all the time, but they got a seat somewhere in the country so that they could be in Parliament. And that seat was a way for them to be in Parliament. That's not what it's meant to be. You're meant to be somebody in that seat, in that constituency, who represents, that community. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, it sounds really, really obvious, doesn't it, that your main job as an MP is to represent the people of the constituency
Yeah,
that you represent. Well, it's in that word representation, isn't it?
exactly.
But I mean, to be honest, I mean, I mentioned it last week. I'm finding my way through this world of politics, and something I always struggled with was like the alignment of an MP going in down into Parliament, and because there's the balance to be had between representing, being, what do you put first? The party, the constituents, the
Mhm.
national interest. That you've got to balance all of those different things. And
Mhm.
I always thought myself growing up, I was like, I don't get how anybody can swear allegiance to a party and agree on every single issue across. Do you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like maybe you lean a little bit that way on that issue, that way on that issue. But you have to go into Parliament and you're expected to just agree with every single policy that comes
You
through.
get an email. You get an email every week telling you how to vote, and it depends on the line of that whip. You get a 1-line whip, a 2-line whip, a 3-line whip, and those whips, basically those emails as they are now, but would have one time been an instruction, tell you from your side, from your party, from your government, if they're in government, tell you how you should vote on X, Y, and Z, and you have to, as an MP, be like, oh, okay, well, I don't believe in that. My government does and wants me to vote with it, but my constituents don't want me to. And I had 600 emails from people saying they don't want me to. What do I do? Who do I keep happy? Do I keep the people who I was elected to be in their party of and who selected me to be their candidate? Or do I represent the people who actually voted for me and the constituency that I'm meant to represent? And that's nothing to say of all the charities, the NGOs, the campaign groups who are constantly emailing, sitting down with you. If you're a Labour MP, trade unions, which union you belong to will have a say. Trade unions almost produce their own whips, say this is how you should be voting as a Unite the Union Labour MP. This is how you should be voting as a Unison Labour MP. So there is a hell of a lot of play with that. And then obviously people wanting to access your time and your opinions, and that's what the lobbying stuff is there to protect against. Is these companies that would just throw money at politicians because it would be so easy for them to do so. Heathrow Airport, I was told once that Heathrow Airport would have had that third runway if our lobbying laws weren't as strict as they are. They would have had that third runway years ago, because all they would have done is just throw money at politicians and say, vote with us. And that's the way it goes. And sadly, that's America. And I don't know how they get back from it, because it is so baked into their political systems now that it is very difficult for them to unpick it all. And it's a reason that both sides, left and right, refer to Washington, D.C. as the swamp.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm always impressed by MPs that manage to push. We talk about that balance between voting in the constituents' best interests or voting within the party's best interests. Now, I always find it very impressive to see MPs push as far as they can against, if they disagree with the party line, to vote against the party, but still manage to maintain and to not be kicked out of the party.
Yeah,
I'm guessing. I always actually found that when I was a workplace rep, when I was still in industry, that you don't always. I mean, there's a real nuance to it, and I think that's something that people maybe don't fully understand all the time. That there's a real nuance to not always just disagreeing. Like, for example, when I was a workplace rep, against the employer, and going in and just being really hard against it, because as soon as that relationship breaks down, it's a lot harder to then negotiate and win for the workers and win for the workplace. So sometimes you have to, you pick your battles, and you concede on this and you push on that. And I think, as far as I can gather, there's a lot of that as an MP, or at least if you're an MP that sits on the fringes of how of your party's policies.
I've seen MPs who've been in their own party, absolutely kind of shut out of discussions or negotiations about something. Say you're in government, right, and you're representing a place and a school has been marked for closure in your constituency, and then you go to your whoever's in the education brief in your party in government, and you say, oh, I I want this to be kept open. Like, it's really important. Here's all the benefits for the community. And they say, yeah, but no, we're not, you know. What position does that put you in? Because presumably you're taking the side of that campaign and you're going to be campaigning with it. So you're campaigning against your own party. And then conversely, all of a sudden you hear the Tories are saying, well, we would keep it open. We want to make the case for it. And then you have to find yourself agreeing with the political opposition that you don't like. So there is a lot of pragmatism to be made. And I've found people who go from campaigning and activism, which, look, that was my route into politics as well. I still do like activism and stuff. I don't tend to go on protests now, but, you know, I fully support them. But people who come from that route into Westminster find it very difficult. And that's because you have to be able to talk to Tory MPs, and you've probably never spoken to Tory MPs before. Why would you hang out with Tories and Tory MPs? You have to be able to communicate with them. You have to be able to get stuff done. And if you're going to benefit your community, there is so much work done across the aisle. Committees, all-party parliamentary groups up here in Westminster, and they're called CPGs, cross-party groups. That you spend more time with people in other political parties than you do in your own. So it is very much, it's quite a lonely job in that respect. And if you want to go in and just toe the party line and become a junior minister and do everything the government says, fair enough, but you will lose a lot of yourself along the way doing that and find yourself voting with things you don't agree with. It's difficult. And I think this is the thing that really it really jaded me and made me very cynical working in that kind of atmosphere. But one thing I will tell you is there's some gems when it works, because, for example, I remember Dennis Skinner telling the story, right? The great Dennis Skinner, Beast of Bolsover. And Dennis had been a young man, so you can imagine how far back that was. No disrespect to Dennis. I think he's in his 90s now. But he had been a young man when Enoch Powell was opposite him on the Tory benches, right? And Enoch Powell was trying to block legislation to allow stem cell research to take place, because Enoch Powell believed there was a lot of eugenics in his belief, but he also believed that it was an affront to God and to religion, right? Dennis Skinner knew how many lives this would save and how many people it would help. But the only way for Dennis Skinner to stop Enoch Powell being able to stand up and block that was by filibustering. And obviously filibustering normally is a hugely frustrating process. It was for Enoch Powell that night. But Dennis Skinner could only, because it was Enoch Powell's motion, so he had the floor, he could only do it if he talked about something relating to Enoch Powell. So Dennis Skinner stayed up all the night before, memorizing all the rivers, the roads, the towns, the villages in Enoch Powell's constituency. And he spoke, I believe it was one of the longest filibusters. It was either for 4 or 5 hours, but he spoke continuously, not taking any interventions, not stopping, about Enoch until everybody else had left the chamber, right? With, you know, oh, this is ridiculous. And Enoch Powell sat the whole time and just looked him dead in the eyes, you know, on the other side. And he said, when he went to leave, Enoch Powell just said, I reckoned without you, and then left. And then years later, Dennis says, you know, some little girl came up to him and said, you know, I wouldn't be alive without you because of what you did on that day. So that, you know, while there are, of course, there's frustrations with how archaic and ridiculous the system is, it also has its benefits, and a huge amount of good work does take place within that system.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, potential future star of the week there, I think, in Dennis Skinner.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That one, we'll maybe line up a couple of clips from, because there's some absolute corkers, isn't there, from
gems, yeah.
Yeah. But talking of you know, togetherness and you know, and activism and protests, and there was a big one this weekend. The Together Alliance put together a big march in London, which has been essentially for people who weren't aware of it. There's reported 500,000 people. I mean, wow. I don't know. There's always contests over numbers. So it's essentially, it was a response to the big Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom march that happened last summer, but with a positive message. Not a message of division, a message of togetherness, and it looked like a great event, you know. And it was good to see people out. And from what I can gather, there wasn't much bother. I think you tend to get the what do they call them? like sort of social media. What are they called again? Social media influencers who essentially go out and take videos and try and auditors. That's the word, auditors.
Oh, is that what they
Basically,
call
what they do
themselves?
is, yeah, they'll go into the crowds and sort of like try and provoke people, but then stand back and look as though, I haven't done anything. I'm just standing here. I'm allowed to be here.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing. But I think in general there wasn't much trouble. It looked like a really good event. But it just got me thinking, it's great, like it's fantastic that this is happening. But on the same weekend, I posted a video working with a politician in the Northeast. I was really, really proud of the video. And to be honest, I think the person who did the video with does some really good work.
It was excellent as well. I can
yeah.
attest to it, saw it.
Yeah. But what I found interesting, rather than the usual, because again, I'll just for people who are unaware, I make videos on Instagram and TikTok. Rather than the usual sort of pushback from people who politically would disagree with us on various different topics, I actually got some heat from people who would normally agree with me because of sort of, let's just call it conflicting, a conflicting view over, it's not even in fact, actually, it's not a conflicting view over Israel and Gaza. We both agree on what is a genocide in Gaza and how horrific it is, but maybe just on some of the issues around the Northeast and the Pearson engineering site.
Okay, yeah.
But what I found bizarre, well, it wasn't bizarre really, but it was interesting. On the same weekend of this Together Alliance, I was reminded that there's still a long way to go for people in progressive movements to not eat each other alive and to realize actually, we aren't each other's enemies here. we
totally.
Lots of issues, but what you find is it's so quick, and I think there's a real problem on the quotation marks the left where people let perfect get in the way of good.
Totally.
For a lot of people, there's a real purity about issues, and if you're either an enemy, you're either a mortal enemy, or you're a full ally. And going back to what we were just talking about there in terms of Parliament and having to talk to people on both sides of the floor and all those different things, it's just this. I just feel like there's still quite a long way to go for everyone to really truly be together and to work in a common goal. And until that happens, it's very, very difficult. And you talk about there'll be lots of people who vote in Green now who would have been Labour supporters, and people who are Labour supporters who've now gone to Reform and all those different things, And I truly believe that there's still lots of Labour voters and still a lot of Green voters who all want to be in the same place, right? We all want a strong NHS. We all want, I don't know, name a million different issues. Cheaper energy bills, clean air, good education, safe streets. We all want the same things. It's about how you get there, right? But what I notice is that despite all wanting the same things, people can turn on each other very, 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 very quickly. That was a reminder of that this weekend,
It's a shame. It's a real shame, mate, because it happens. And some of the biggest criticism or the loudest criticism, perhaps, or maybe just the criticism that I pay attention to more than others, it comes from our own side, and listen, people have the right to disagree. Of course they do. But sometimes it is just, it really can be pathetic and really disheartening because, for example, there's two camps that it falls into for me. The first one is that it's people who think they agree with you until a certain issue comes up, and then you find out you disagree. And then at that point, I just have to say, well, look, we don't agree, and that's fine. I have found that with Iran immensely. So I've been kicked off TV shows. I've been kicked off the radio for calling what happens in Israel a genocide. I've, been committed to the free Palestinian cause for many, many years. And, Gaza is something that I've regularly contributed about. Even still, there are people who also agree with that will never be happy with the fact that I don't go far enough in certain areas or whatever. And it's just that purity. And often I think it's just ego a lot of the time. I think it's people think they could do it better, or I would have said this. Great. But you weren't saying it. I was saying it. And I'll hold everyone to account. And it's the same with the Iranian stuff, I can't tell you how many messages I've had from people saying, oh, you were doing so good until you said that the Iranian regime's monstrous. You've fallen for Israeli and Western propaganda. And I'm like, I really haven't, mate. Like, books on that bookshelf, at least 5 of them I've read about Iran. I know about Iran. Yes, I haven't been there. I can't go there because if I went there, I would be detained, right? That's enough to tell you all you need to know about the Iranian regime. I want democracy and freedom for the people of Iran, and I want that women-led resistance and fight back against the regime to succeed. I don't want Donald Trump to bomb the shit out of the population. That those two things are not something I have an issue holding in balance with each other, and unfortunately, some people can't get their head around that.
That's a massive problem, not just with Iran, but across the board, right? In what I find, when it comes to immigration or just issues all across the board, where you have to pick a camp and stick to it and fight to the death for it. And it's like actually, there's way more middle ground. There's so much more to be discussed around the majority of issues than just pick a side and fight it out. And that's where a big part of the problem is,
Yeah, and it's that allows misogyny to thrive on the left, or racism to thrive on the left. Places where you think, oh well, no, because these people agree with me, so they could never hold those values. I've heard it, I've seen it. Homophobia on the left, all of it, And if you cannot criticize those people because you agree with them politically on most things, then unfortunately, I couldn't care less. I agree with a lot of, for example, let's take Venezuela. Maduro. I agree with a lot of the economics of the Venezuelan country and how Chavez worked and all the rest of it. Like, that was my bread and butter politics, kind of growing up and becoming a teenager. But I don't want an authoritarian regime that detains people that disagrees with it, because I also believe in democracy. So being able to have those views and hold them in, people call it both sidism now, like as if you're obsessed with both sides, as if you're a centrist. And there's nothing centrist about me. I'm a socialist, but I'm a pragmatic socialist who's a pluralist and wants to work with everyone and anyone who wants to push forward those goals.
And to be honest, James, I think that's where, when you talk about Gaza, where anti-Semitism can start to creep in.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, if you're on the side of a free Palestine, you must also be fully anti-Israel, and therefore, and there's a leap there that can happen, which can also be dangerous,
I've heard it, mate. I had to call it out with someone a few weeks ago who I was with, who said to me they were praising me, heaping praise on me. You've been excellent, all the rest of it. And Bibi Netanyahu, he's disgusting, isn't he? I said, yeah, he's disgusting. Hate that government. It should be gone.
Agreed.
Corrupt. And then he goes, it's always been the same with the Jews. You've lost me, mate. Why did you? That's not what you needed to say at all. Like, what on earth do British, American, any of those Jewish people have anything to do with Bibi Netanyahu or Israel? I don't even agree with Zionism. I'm an anti-Zionist. I don't agree with the concept of Zionism. But Israel exists now, and it's always existed in my lifetime. I don't have the right to take that away. I advocate for every single person who has been misrepresented by a government and all the rest of it. If you think the Israeli people are inherently evil, I think they've got some major cultural issues, by the way, like with the way they view Arabs and the way they view Palestinians. If you think that every single Israeli is evil because they are Jewish or because they are, then I'm sorry, you've lost me. You're not going to have my support, but I will always stand up for a free Palestine. If you can't do both, we're not allies.
Yeah, this right, the statement I'm about to make would be really controversial and really like a red flag for a lot of people. But when missiles are falling on Israel, right, despite me, like I said, being fully behind a free Palestine and thinking it's horrific, the genocide in Gaza, right, I do not like seeing missiles falling on Israeli cities, because I always come back to the same point. I mean, people see, and I understand why people would think, get them back, right? Well, I get it.
Yeah.
But for me, I think about the children. I think about the kids that are there that have been born into this life, right? They have not chosen. I look at my daughter and think, if she was born in Israel, would she deserve to die because of what Netanyahu's done? And the answer is no. No, she would not. It's just like saying, if you think that Keir Starmer's a war criminal, if you think Keir Starmer's evil or whatever, does that mean kids in London deserve to be bombed?
It's exactly the same.
Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's like there has to be the separation in like, it's super, super difficult because it's a horrendous situation. But like, it also doesn't. It fuels the other side of the argument by not being able to have that conversation and being able to actually identify. Hang on, this might not be right. That might not be right.
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
And this isn't, again. This is, just to be clear. This is not me being like pro-Israel, of course not.
No.
But the fact that I have to make that clear, just
It's
because
crazy.
I said I don't like seeing missiles falling on it. I don't like missiles falling anywhere in particular, you know.
No. And that's the thing. If you think there's a side you have to attach yourself to, then you're not understanding the nature of these conflicts and our historical role in them, right? We should be holding those to account and criticizing that. But it was the same with the IRA, mate. It was the same with, you know, a lot of it, like people on the left very much struggled to condemn the IRA, right? When I was younger, would be like, oh yeah, get back the evil British Empire and stuff like that, right? Like, yeah, in 1916, perhaps, when the struggle was there. But if you're bombing civilians in a supermarket on the outskirts of London and you're going to kill children because you think that, yeah, and I agree, by the way, that I believe in a united Ireland. I'm a Republican. But the fact that you would kill civilians in any way, shape, or form, I'm sorry, I'm not down with it, you know? Not down with it.
Yeah. It's a super, super difficult one, isn't it, to sort of navigate through. And it's, but to go back to it, Together Alliance, just to put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Great to see that. And as a counter to the Tommy Robertson event, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And it's what I would like to see. You know, my big boss, Paul Novak, the General Secretary of the TUC, I believe, was there taking part.
A lot of them. Saw a lot of the leaders of the trade unions and stuff marching in step, and it makes me wonder, you know, with the Greens, because the Greens are very trade union focused, but they don't have any affiliation. Makes me wonder if, and again, I'll not say too much. We don't want to get you sacked, and we don't want to get anybody in, you know, kind of these debates now. But I do wonder the future of trade unionism, if it's always going to be wedded to the Labour Party, or if a trade union would affiliate with a different political party, because that would change things financially for a lot of people. So it will be interesting to see how that goes down the line. But yeah, Together Alliance, great to see. I know we're coming up on time as well. We've got to get I'm very keen to hear this jingle. I'm not going to lie. I'm very excited to hear about Nonsense of the Week.
Should we do Nonsense of the Week?
Yeah, let's do Nonsense of the Week. I mean, I'm kind of dreading it already, but like, you know, we have to be able to talk about these things, don't we?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip, and I want you to react, just to see how you feel. All right?
Okay.
It's Trump's Nonsense of the Week.
What is missing in leadership?
Well, it's winning. You got to win. You know, I've watched a lot of people, leaders, great leaders. And, you know, the one thing about sports is you break it down into, you know, a 2-hour period, something nice. You don't have to wait a lifetime to find out is somebody a winner or a loser. You got a lot of losers, mostly losers, fortunately. It's a good thing to have a lot of losers. I always like to hang around with losers, actually, because it makes me feel better. I hate guys that are very, very successful and you have to listen to their success stories. I like people that like to listen to my success.
Wow.
Thoughts, James?
It all makes sense. It all makes sense, doesn't it? I like losers. I mean, we kind of guessed that looking by your cabinet. We kind of guessed that by the fact that you're friends with Jeffrey Epstein. You know, we kind of guessed that you liked Elon Musk. We kind of like guessed that when you were hanging around with every loser on the face of this planet. And of course, you are, Donald, the king of the losers, you know? So it's absolutely no surprise at all to me. But my God, you know, to hear him, you know, it's when he does the kind of like, you know, not many people think this, and it's as if it's going to be an original thought. We're like, bro, we knew that, dude. You've been telegraphing that to the world for years.
I think it just says a lot about the fragility of his ego, you know. I think there was a point where he said, "I like them to listen to my success," you know, and that is just sums that man up.
Oh God, I think he's becoming more. Do you think he's becoming more truthful? I don't want to speculate about his possible dementia, but like, that is a symptom, isn't it? Becoming quite truthful without a filter. And I feel like he's doing that more and more. He just says this shit.
Yeah. Just incredible. I don't really. I think it's just there's so much you can dissect from the way Trump operates, and it's just every interview, every time I see him speak, it just comes across like he's got the biggest but most fragile ego. It's like a Zeppelin, a couple of shots
really.
that coming down. It is coming down, but
Well,
I just
think
love to see what he's like behind closed doors. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly, let's say it, like losing a war in Iran, not gone how we would have wanted. How does that feel? And I actually, again, I was thinking to myself, the people who are surrounding Donald Trump, obviously he's got some pretty hefty yes men in place, and women in some regards. Do they believe it? At what point do they stop believing the things that they have to say?
When does the pivot happen? Yeah, when does the pivot happen where they become, because it can't just be like a switch. That's the thing. Because people will know. People will be like, oh, the second that he declined or died or whatever happens, that you immediately were like, oh, yeah, by the way, like, I didn't believe any of that shit. I'll tell you the interesting one is Marco Rubio for me, right? It's often touted that the two people who are fighting for the succession of Trump and Trumpism are Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, I believe now, which is like our foreign secretary, right? He deals with everything abroad. And JD Vance, who is the vice president. And JD Vance, of course, has a mandate, really. He's elected as the vice president. So he would be the successor in any event where Donald Trump passes away or anything like that, becomes kind of compromised. Marco Rubio does this thing now where obviously he agrees with Trump on paper and stuff, and you can tell behind closed doors he's giving him all the yeses and everything. But he does do this this thing now where Trump's talking and all the rest are laughing and all the rest of it. And Marco Rubio kind of does this kind of like stalwart kind of face that you could interpret as either sitting in agreement or sitting in disagreement. And I think that's quite an interesting thing. I think that flags to me that he is definitely on a trajectory to give him the old Julius Caesar and plunge the knife in the second the opportunity comes up.
Well, interesting. I just had a quick look there at the poly market. Very topical. Yeah. And JD Vance is a 36% chance of being the Republican nominee for 2028. And Marco Rubio back at 20%. Now, I don't quite know what that means. The rest, Tucker Carlson, 5%. That's interesting. And then there's just loads of, quite a lot of 1%. I mean, Tom Brady has got a 1% chance. Kim Kardashian is there at 1% as well. So it might be worth putting a couple of quid on Kim Kardashian. You never know.
Well, to say if our mother was a campaign manager, you know what they say: the devil works hard, but Kris Jenner works harder. So I think she, I think if she was the candidate, I think we know who'd be winning.
Well, let's. I've got another clip. Yeah, I'm going to move on slightly. Because I do want to cover that British Maxon as we mentioned at the start.
I would love to cover British Maxon.
Yeah, so I'll play this clip just to give everyone a bit of an idea what we are talking about here.
Maxon. I want everyone in barber jackets, Land Rovers, living in the fucking country, getting meat from the butchers, drinking raw milk. This is so doable. And I promise you, if you start doing that, life feels a lot fucking different. So don't get disheartened. Let's start fucking Britain, Maxon. Let's bring fucking Britain back and make Britain great again. But you can't do that if you're relying on a job. You can't do that if you're stuck behind a screen every day. You can't do that if you've got a weak mindset. So it starts with you. There's no good pointing fingers if you're the one being a piece of shit. All right? I know it's easy and there's less work when you can blame someone else. But realistically, making Britain great again starts with us. So raise your fucking standards. Go out there and earn your own money. And if you want help doing that, just drop me a DM and I'll show you exactly how I went from working a 9-to-5 in Leicester to having my own business, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year online, living in a beautiful place, eating the cleanest food and being the man of the house for my family so that my girlfriend could be a stay-at-home mum and raise our kid with British values.
So did you see the leap there? So
yeah.
British values, start with barber jackets, Land Rovers, meat and raw milk.
Yeah.
And you finish with mum staying at home.
Yeah.
British values,
British values, yeah.
and I will show you how to make 150k, 200k.
And you can't do it with a job. You can't do it with a job. You can't have it's famously known, if you have a job, because jobs are, you can't have a job, and these people always say, you can't have a barber jacket if you have a job. Everyone knows that,
Yeah. So I mean, we discussed the manosphere stuff. It is just copy and paste, but it's interesting to see it come in different forms. So now, you're seeing that, you think, oh, this guy just loves Britain. This guy is just, he likes the country life, and then it's just the pivot towards the back end of the video where it goes from raw milk, meat from the butchers, sound, all right, sounds good to me. Then, hang on a second, I'll get you rich quick. You can have this life. Quit your job. Yeah. Stop being pardon my French, stop being a shit. I don't know where that came from. Apologies, we didn't give the foul language warning. But yeah, just, I mean, a mad, and to finish it on teaching my kids, bringing my kids up with British values.
Well, he's just admitted that he's not raising his kids. His wife's doing it. So,
yeah,
the funny thing about all of this is it's just an aesthetic, isn't it? I'm convinced, because this is a well-proven model that works for them, which is that I have something you want, I'm going to show you how to get it, and you can have it too, but you need to pay me for the benefit of that. Although if I was living that life that I tell you I'm living, I wouldn't be asking you for money, would I? So that's the obvious thing with it. But I do think they could attach that to any aesthetic, and that's what we're seeing with this, right? What's next, dude? Geordie Maxon. Maybe that could be our thing. Maybe we could do a Geordie Maxon. So, you should be staying at home, eating steak bakes from Greg's. You've got to be listening
in black bullets.
Exactly. Listen to Sam Fender and only in the little waster, Bobby Thompson, and only wearing your Newcastle United jersey all day, every day. And like, that is the thing. They could attach it to any aesthetic. And this aesthetic, the barber jacket, the Land Rover, I already have thoughts about that, right? As somebody like yourself, we grew up in semi-rural, fairly rural areas. I lived on farms, rented accommodation on farms in the middle of nowhere. The idea of that being rural and exclusively barber jackets, Land Rovers, the dog walks, all of that stuff, there is just a direct link between that and perceived wealth, and that's what it is. It's all about wealth, and they know that a barber jacket costs 300 quid. They know that a Land Rover is something that people, the royal family drive, for example. These are things that are wealth status, and if you want those things, you don't even need to be making that much money to have those things. It's just that put them all together and you get this image of like success and wealth. And it's that is the kind of intoxicating factor for young men, especially.
Well, he's probably got his barber jacket from Temu and his Land Rover on lease. So, he's
been down to South Shields to the barber outlet that they've got there. That's what he's done.
But no, so what I've just done, right, is I've perfectly set I've just set out the stall. I've planted the seeds, and we are now all perfectly ready for Star of the Week. Okay.
Does this have a jingle, or do we just get the benefit of your singing for nonsense?
I don't think anybody needs to hear me come up. We'll see what we can do. I'll see what Susan from Paraguay thinks of my audio before.
Yeah, we'll see. Right. Test that mic out.
But no, so Star of the Week this week is one of my it's a household favorite in the Stewart household. It's nice to finish on because we're coming to the end now, but just to finish on a nice positive note, a house favorite for the Stewart household is a YouTube channel called Outdoor Boys. Okay, now what it is, there's the dad, Luke. I think he was a lawyer, lived down in was it Mississippi or Texas, but basically moved up, spent a lot of time camping and fishing and doing all that sort of outdoor stuff. Moved up to Alaska, goes camping in the winter with all the snow, really hardcore stuff. Yeah. But what he does is he takes he's got 3 sons, and he takes his sons out with him, all weather conditions. But the guy's really, really good at what he does, right? Really, he makes shelters from scratch. It's really cool stuff. Ice fishing, all the whole bit. And I've got a clip here. very, very wholesome stuff, right? And I've got a clip of his eldest son. I think what he's done is he's like showing him and like letting him do his own thing.
Okay.
And he's going out solo camping. But I'll play the clip just to give you, it's a couple of minutes, but I'll show you. I might stop the clip halfway through once I feel like you've got it.
Okay.
There? Can you please come out here and help me, Dad?
Oh, hang on a second.
Thanks. Oh,
Start
hey,
that
Dad,
again.
you there? Can you please come out here and help me, Dad?
No problem. I'll be out here in 2 seconds.
Thanks. Oh, Dad's here. He brought Raccoon along with him.
Hey, bud.
Hey, Dad. Thanks for coming.
I'm proud of you for getting this far, bud.
I knew I'd have troubles with the fire at some point.
See, where's your little bag full of the fire stuff?
Got squashed by some in the fire tinder.
Okay. See, and did you cut open the little vacuum sealed bag?
Oh, you're supposed to cut it open?
What did you do?
I laid it down in there. It's buried under, it's underneath all of the shavings.
Well, here, let's pull it out. Oh, that's a good pile of shavings. Yeah.
These are the failed attempts.
Okay, why don't you get your pocket knife and cut that open? If your cotton balls get wet, they won't light. So I vacuum sealed these cotton balls in case they get wet. So just go and kind of cut open the top of that. See the sticks with the moss on it? Feel how wet that moss is? That moss, even when it's dry, it doesn't like to burn. So stuff with moss on it, it'll burn, but it's harder than stuff without moss. Does that make any sense?
Oh,
Your firewood was all dry last night, right?
kind of.
And you could have dried it by the fire, right?
Yeah,
And then you could have taken it inside your tent or underneath the awning and kept it safe, right?
yeah.
Do you know how I learned that?
How?
By not doing it and then realizing, oh, my firewood's wet. so now you're learning too. Just one.
Wow, man.
Thoughts?
It's just so nice to see him. Like he's just like in a world of like performative kind of like, you know, aggressive idea of masculinity. This guy's just so calm. Like I listen, he could talk me through anything. He's got just a really calm aura, but to hear him talking to the kid and being vulnerable with his kid, he's not trying to make his kid think he's the best. He's like, I was there. You know, that example where he says that, how I learned that was because I made that mistake as well, you know, and he's laughing about it and he's showing his kid his vulnerability and he's teaching him. That's a guy who is obviously very at ease with himself, very comfortable with himself, and as a result, there's just none of that toxic nonsense that there usually is.
So he's got an incredibly successful YouTube channel, 20 million something. I mean, nearly as many subscribers as what we've got.
He's just lucky guy.
Close. But what he said was he started this channel to spend more time with his sons and to go out camping with them and to spend time with them and all this. You know, they were really young, but now they're starting to get older. They're in school, but he was doing a video a week, and it was actually starting to take him away from his kids. So at the height of his powers, like I said, 20 million subscribers and making quite literally millions of pounds off this YouTube channel, which he turned the comments off and, you know, like just didn't need any of the feedback or anything, just put the videos out there and the world had it, you know, and incredibly successful. But he just made a video saying, I'm not making videos anymore because it's taken me away from my sons and it's impacting my family in a negative way, you know.
Wow.
So it's amazing. And actually what he's done is the kid who was in there, his eldest son called Tom, he's helped him start his own YouTube channel, which has now got millions of subscribers. He's now making videos. He's almost just sort of passed on the torch, and now, you know, his son's set up for life. And it's just such a wholesome. I honestly recommend anybody. It's called Outdoor Boys on YouTube. Some fantastic videos.
And you can still watch Can you still watch the old videos and stuff, even though he's not making new ones?
Yeah, I mean, there's hundreds of videos, and they're like it'll be an hour long. So we watch them all the time. You know, it's just like wholesome telly. But yeah, Luke from the Outdoor Boys is our star of the week.
Should we give him a bit of a round of applause?
Yeah, well done.
Well done.
We need like a trophy. I'm guessing he'd love. We'll just make up a star of the week trophy and send it out to him. But actually, Susan in Paraguay is on the continent, so
she can go in. If you set off now, Susan, you might make it to, I don't know, Missouri by the next episode, and you can hand him the award ourselves. But I can't think of a better recipient after the weeks of toxic masculinity that we've had to endure than him. So I'm really pleased that he's been the first recipient.
Yeah, and I couldn't think of a better way to finish off my Monday evening than spending it chatting with you, James. And
oh man,
thank hopefully you people at home enjoying our conversation, and maybe tomorrow morning or the day after that, people driving into work listening to the podcast.
If you've been listening, please do us the one favor of making sure to subscribe to the channel. Always wanted to say that. Always wanted to get that out there, Craig. So I've done that now. But also give us a follow on Instagram. We're both very active on Instagram. As that guy Craig and Jay Mathewson official. So give us a follow on there, because that's kind of, I say, where we do most of our stuff. You do TikTok as well, though, don't you, Craig? You're on TikTok.
Yeah, that guy Craig, or just whatever. I think I'm on everything basically. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. But yeah, I think maybe we'll set up an Instagram page just for the podcast, and then, because what I'd love is for people to send in messages for Star of the Week, some ideas. But I don't know if you can do that on YouTube or not. But if you just send a message to us either, and we'll get your Star of the Week up and we can chat
your nominations.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Craig, and we'll all see you again next week.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.